Hello, everyone. Welcome to another virtual event with Mysterious Galaxy. I hope you're all having a great evening or day, or if you're watching this in the future, just a great existence. Hello. Today, we have a wonderful event with two wonderful authors. We are celebrating the recent releases of The Buried and the Bound, as well as Swift the Storm and Fierce the Flame. Of course, let's all welcome Rochelle Hassan and Meg Long. Hello.
Hello, everyone. We are excited to be here today.
We're excited to have you. For those of you joining us, Rochelle Hassan grew up reading about dragons, quests, and unlikely heroes. Now she writes about them too. She is the author of the middle grade novel The Prince of Nowhere and young adult fantasy novel The Buried and the Bound, the recent title here. Meg Long is the author of Cold the Night, Fast the Wolves, and the most recent title, of course, Swift the Storm, Fierce the Flame. She taught middle and high school for 8 years before jumping into the tech industry as a content writer. When not reading or writing, she's kicking things at her Muay Thai gym with her boyfriend, playing video games, or obsessing over Sailor Moon fan art. That is great mood. I love it.
Those are all true things.
For those of you who haven't yet purchased Rochelle's or Meg's books, what are you waiting for? How dare you? There's a link below that'll take you to our website. If you order any one of their titles as well as their backlog, we do have some signed book plates for you that we'll make sure to get with your order. You can pick them up in store, or we can ship it to you. And if you have any questions that you would love to ask these two authors, there's another link below if you're watching this live, of course. Ask a question, put your questions in there, and they'll be answered later on. All right, I'm going to go ahead and disappear for a while, but I'll see everyone towards the Q&A section. See you later.
Bye, Nick.
Bye.
Thank you. Well, hello, everyone. Here we are. We have questions for each other.
Yes.
Because we are friends, so we're going to interview each other with some tough, hard-hitting journalist questions. But first, we'll just give you the short pitches on our books. So again, I'm Meg Long. I wrote Cold the Night, Fast the Wolves, which is a sci-fi reimagining of the Iditarod sled dog race. The companion novel / sort of sequel is out now, Swift the Storm, Fierce the Flame, and it is told from Remy's point of view, who is a character in the first book. And it's sort of her search for a long-lost friend and also her search for herself and how she fits into the world. And it's got vibes from Tomb Raider and Jungle Madness and warring factions like the 100. So that's my short pitch.
And it's amazing. And I love that book so much. And I am Rochelle. I'm the author of The Buried and the Bound. It is a young adult contemporary fantasy about 3 teenagers. One of them is a hedge witch, one of them is a necromancer, and one of them is carrying a curse. He was cursed to forget his true love. And they band together to defeat this evil creature that lurks in the woods outside of their hometown. And it is book 1 of a trilogy.
It's also the best book ever. I'm obsessed with it.
So no bias at all.
None at all. Totally unfair. We're not friends. I just love your book. Just kidding.
And then I guess we'll go through our interview questions, our interview questions that we have prepared. I have them. You have them on your cute little note cards, and I just have them in my notebook in my ugly handwriting.
It's fine. I'll start. So, okay. What are your biggest inspirations for this story?
Fairy tales are probably the obvious one because it's a fae book. And that's both the fairy tales that I grew up on and also the fairy tales that I researched while I was writing this book. There's a lot of lore, so a lot of inspiration to draw on. And I can use that research as a springboard for my ideas rather than sticking very closely to the lore. And then as a kid, my second one is that I grew up reading the kind of fantasy stories where a normal human would either find magic in their world or go through a portal to a magical world. And I always knew I wanted to write something like that and have a fantasy that was grounded in the real world at first. And then the last one would probably be anime, because I watch a lot of it. And in particular in anime, especially the shonen, action animes, there is always really strong friendship arcs and friendship defeating the forces of darkness. And that is definitely an influence. So those are mine. What are your 3 biggest inspirations, Meg?
I just also have to say that your book is like a fairy tale, but like a modern fairy tale. It feels like all those old sort of things we read when we were kids. So I just want to like plug how good it is. Okay. Big 3 inspirations. This book was like written during the pandemic, so it was a mess for many drafts. But I have to say that there was always some like vibes going through it. I'm obsessed with like spies and like double agents and like assassins. So there's a lot of like Black Widow sort of spy girl. I grew up like in a genetically engineered facility sort of vibes. If you ever watched Dark Angel, it's like this old show with Jessica Alba. It's my favorite show of all time. I won't talk about it that much because not everyone has seen it, but whatever. So that was one big inspiration. The second one is probably like warring factions, like in the 100. I just love these sort of like dystopian, post-apocalyptic, like Mad Max style of like this group of people, they're all like gritty and they're fighting this group of people. It's just, I find that super fun. And then the third inspiration, I'm obsessed with Tomb Raider, the video game, the newer ones. They're just so great and gritty, and I love the jungle setting and like swinging on vines. And there's no tombs in the book. No, there's no tombs, but there's a lot of caves and like secret, creepy rooms in them. So there's a lot of those vibes going on in this book. So those are my 3 inspirations.
And there is an amazing jungle setting that felt very real and like very atmospheric. So that element is definitely there, and they're like very clearly.
Sweaty and bugs, and you really feel like you're there.
I was like, the aesthetic, the jungle, the lush forest, and you're like, no, bugs and sweat.
Grass in your face. I've been in jungles, and so like I know they sound really like romantic almost, like Tarzan, but like when you're there, you're like, oh my God, everything is to me. So sorry, I'm in a room where the light is automatic. So if I lean over, it's just me turning on the light. Anyway, second question. What are some themes that your book tackles, and why were they important to you?
So one theme is the theme of like choice and free will, because especially in a fantasy setting where you have like monsters and these like overwhelmingly powerful magical forces, and then the character is like this pathetic, like puny human. The idea of like the characters taking control of their destiny despite all the forces trying to push them in one direction or another, and having to make hard decisions and own them, like, is something I find really compelling. And that's basically a theme that comes up a lot in my work, the idea of like your free will being a form of power that can shape the course of your life just as much as any kind of magic can. So yeah, that's a big theme that's really important to me. What about yours?
I love that. I also have a lot of choice and free will. My character in this book was like genetically engineered to be like an agent for corporations. So she didn't grow up understanding free will. It only came in like later when she met this girl who basically challenged her like entire worldview. And so it's a lot of that. But for Remy, the discovery is really like who she is. Is she the person that they made her to be, or can she be like her own person making her own choices, or are her choices even engineered into her? So it's a lot of that search for like who she is and how she fits into the world and that sort of thing. Yeah.
I love that. And I love Remy a lot. She's so different from Sina. And her like interior like voice is very different. But I got attached to her really quickly.
Yes. Like the first book is very gritty, and Senna's very just like straightforward and like no nonsense and just like angry. And so I'm not like that at all. So when I got to write Remy, I was able to like, let's give Remy some like humor and some spark. Like,
yeah,
they're very different. That's true.
That. Let's see the next one. What was your favorite part to write, and what was the hardest part to write?
Like I said, I drafted this over the pandemic, so it was like the whole thing was very hard. No, but it really was difficult because I took a character that I'd already written in the first book and then made her the main character of the second book. So she already had like a very strong personality, and I knew what I wanted her backstory to be, but I really didn't know like what her journey was. Like like what her arc was going to be. I didn't know, so that was really tough. It took me many drafts. I did find it. So that was hard. But the fun parts, if you've read Cold the Night Fast the Wolves, one of the main characters is a wolf. She doesn't have like a point of view, but it's not like Call of the Wild. But she is like a main character. And so she comes back, obviously, in this book with Senna. They're on this jungle planet with Remy. And so I wanted to make sure that there was still this like bond showing through. And then that Iska, the wolf, is still discovering like, oh, there's so much more to the world than what I've seen. And so she rolls around in the mud and gets into trouble and tries to eat frogs. And like all of these little things happen. And so that was the best part.
It says the MVP.
Yeah, it's how can you not love her? She's like the perfect companion. Ride or die. Anyway, what about you? Favorite part to write, hardest part to write?
One of my favorite parts is the friendship between Aziza and Leo, because at the beginning of the book, she's like this grumpy witch and she thinks that she's better off alone. And Leo is actually like in one of her classes at school and she like does not even know his name. And then Leo, on the other hand, is like very nice and very friendly, and he's really determined to be her friend and he's gonna make it happen. And so like he like inches forward in his relationship with her, and it takes her like half the book to even admit that they are friends. But so then you have this arc where, like in chapter 8, Aziza thinks that Leo is sad and pathetic. And then in chapter 30 something, she's like willing to risk her life for him because that's her best friend. So that development is really satisfying for me and something that I love a lot. And then the hardest part, like avoiding spoilers, the parents in this book don't always do the right thing and they make some like mistakes. And so having to balance like wanting them to be sympathetic, but at the same time, they're not sorry for what they did because they really, really believe that they're doing the right thing. That's like a tricky line to walk. So I think that was
parents aren't perfect.
Yeah. I think these parents are especially not perfect.
It's just great because I feel like in YA books, the parents are either like not there, like where are they? They're on a trip to Europe all the time or something, or they're dead. In the case of my book,
I do have the dead parent trope also.
So it is nice and refreshing to see parents like as involved characters, and then like they're definitely not. They're not like the adult comes in and tells you what to do and then leaves the scene. Like they're there messing up just as much. It's really great.
Yeah.
So last simple, easy interview question about writing. How long have you been writing? What made you start writing? All of the things.
All right. So pretty much I was always writing, but like casually. So like when I was a kid, I was like drawing Sailor Moon fan comics. I would like sit at my table and like draw these comics, and they were like lumpy stick figures. And in like high school, I would write fan fiction on and off. And I had like a whole cast of like original characters in my brain. And some of those characters actually developed into like Aziza, Leo, and Tristan. So they never like fully left me. So I always loved fiction and storytelling. And I think once I realized how much I like books as a storytelling medium, that was what like led me to writing. But I didn't start pursuing publication seriously until like 5 or 6 years ago. And I was like, I didn't know what I was doing with my life. And I just kind of went like, I always said that one day I would write a book, but why does it have to be like one day? Why don't I just get started on that right now? And that was when I sat down and like seriously started learning about like craft, and started working towards it. But yeah, tell me about your writing journey.
We have so much similarities that I feel like we haven't talked about since like before, which is really ironic. So I also was obsessed with anime and manga and comic books growing up. That was like what I wanted to do. I wanted to like draw and write comic books. I also was obsessed with Sailor Moon. Talk about that later. But drawing is, time consuming. Hang on, the light went off again. Drawing is time consuming. And I just slowly, as I went to college and had jobs and stuff, I didn't really have the time to commit to doing it and getting and maintaining the skill that is required. And so I was overseas for a while, and I wasn't reading because books are expensive in other countries and heavy, and so you don't buy them. This was before Kindles. When I moved back to the States, I started reading again, and I was reading all this like really fun YA. It was sort of like the beginning of modern YA. It was The Hunger Games had just came out, Percy Jackson had just come out. I was just devouring these books, and I was like, this is so fun. These characters are fun. The journeys are exciting. It's like an adventure. They're emotional, but they're not like dense and hard to read like a lot of adult books are. And so I was just like, I got really obsessed, and I thought maybe, you know, if they can write these cool characters that are doing fun stuff, like why can't I? And then it just kind of started in, I think, 2016. I sat down just like you. I'm like, I'm going to write this book. I found this thing that I had written for fun, and I was like, I'm going to do this. And it took obviously a long time to get to here.
Yeah.
We all start with such good intentions. So true. All right. So
yeah. It's funny that you wanted to draw first, though, because it's like we might be attracted to different forms of like creativity, but then you kind of have to pick one thing and like really hone in on it. And there have been so many times when I wished that I could draw, and because I want to be able to draw like the things that I'm visualizing in my head. But if I had the skills to do that, I probably would not have like the writing skills there.
Yeah.
So yeah, you end up having to make that decision.
I also feel like drawing is way harder than writing.
I also feel that way, but then artists sometimes say that they feel like the reverse. They feel like the writing is harder, which I can't relate to. But
I mean, I love drawing, but like you really have to work at it to hone those skills so it looks like the way it is in your head on the paper. I never quite got that good. It was always like, this is just okay.
Yeah.
I respect artists so much. So much.
Same.
All right. We have some of fun, like intense questions now. We're going to go ping pong and back and forth. They're not the same questions. The other ones were all the same. These are like specific questions to our books and our writing. So first question, Rochelle. I feel like we're on Jeopardy or something. In the trio from The Buried and the Bound, who is the one that is always getting into trouble? Who is the one at the best at talking their way out of trouble? But who actually gets everyone out of trouble? So who's getting into trouble? Who's good at talking out of trouble? And then who actually saves the day?
They definitely all get into trouble a lot. They all kind of take turns being the biggest like screw up in the group. But in this book, in book 1, Tristan takes the crown, definitely by far, makes the biggest mistakes. As for who can talk their way out of trouble, definitely Leo. He's the nicest one. He's the charming one. He has these like big brown puppy dog eyes, and he can convince anyone to do anything. And it would be a power that like would be very dangerous in anybody else's hands. And Aziza will get them out of trouble usually just because she's the one with the most like magical knowledge and allies among the Fae and powers that she's been working on using her whole life. But yeah, they take turns. They all do get into trouble, and they would all be very screwed without each other. So
it's so true. I feel like Aziza is the one that's like, we don't have time for this. Let's go. And she just like has to round up Trista and Leo and like get them going. And I just love that so much.
Yeah. But then when she gets it into her head that she has to do something, she will like wander into the most dangerous situations just because, well, guess I got to do this.
Yeah. She's by far one of my most favorite characters. I love all three. I really do. But like Aziza, just like, I love her.
Thank you. Speaking of characters that we love, I love your antagonists in Swift the Storm, Fierce the Flame. There are basically 2 main antagonists, and they are, I need to look at my notes to remember what their names are. No, Director Wayland, because I wrote down how to pronounce it, because I'm always like, is it Wyland or is it Wayland? But it's Director Wayland, and the other antagonist is her right-hand commando, Taggart. So if you were to compare them to Disney villains, who would they be the most like?
So first, a fun fact, Wayland and Taggart are both named after like bad guys from other favorite movies of mine. Wayland is from Aliens and Predator, the Wayland like Yutani Corporation. That's like a not so subtle reference. Taggart is actually in a sci-fi movie, but I can never remember which one. But the name is also in Blazing Saddles. So ridiculous. Anyway,
that's amazing. I did not catch those references at all.
They're just, I'm writing for myself like 90% of the time. Like giggling as I write. Nobody's going to get it. It's fine. So as Disney characters, I feel like Wayland is a mix. She's like intense, and she's a mix of Scar and probably so Scar from Lion King and Yzma from The Emperor's New Groove, because they both are like power hungry, and it's like not their place to take the power, and they both like try and use these underlings to do all their dirty work. But she's also like,
No, go on.
Oh, she's also a little bit like Cruella de Vil, because she's like really obsessed with this idea of like getting power of this planet. So it's like one track mind, like intense. And then Taggart is like the perfect loyal henchman. I can't even. He's not Kronk, because everybody loves Kronk from Emperor's New Groove, but he's like an evil Kronk, maybe like Clayton from Tarzan, like that guy.
Oh, I love him.
Always ready to shoot first. Yeah, you hate him to love him. He's like such a good bad guy. And then maybe a little bit of like the Sheriff of Nottingham from the old Fox, Robin Hood that everybody kind of loves. That guy was just so sleazy, and you just hated him, and that's Taggart, that guy. So yeah, which is ironic because the character of Sheriff of Nottingham is a wolf in that movie.
Oh, I never watched that movie.
Overweight wolf, like just massive. But like all the wolves in my book are the good guys. So it's a very like random comparison.
But I love the combination of Scar, Yzma, and Cruella de Vil, because you pick the villains with like all the most dramatic flair.
So dramatic. Director Wayland is very dramatic. You'll see in one of the early scenes, they're brought into her office and everything is white and like thick fur and like fancy shiny stuff. And Remy's like, oh, this is going to be a pain in the butt, isn't it? She's 100%.
Remy's like not having it from the moment she even walks into that office.
No, I already know I'm going to be driven, crazy by this person. So very dramatic. Yes. Okay. It's my turn to ask you a question. Yes.
Okay.
Let's see. Yes. Question 3. Can you see that? Sort of. It's really bright.
Oh, there it is.
It's backwards. Or it's backwards for me. Anyway. Let's see. In The Buried and the Bound, Leo, soft boy Leo, he was cursed so that on his 16th birthday, he lost all memories of his true love. Why did you do this to me? Part of the story is about his search for a way to break the curse and to get his memories back and to find this person that he lost, that he knows that he loves, that he won't give up on. So since this book is a little bit about true love, what would each character's best piece of relationship advice be?
I'm laughing because you shouldn't take advice from any of them. Leo's best piece of advice, and the thing that he keeps like telling himself, is that you never give up on true love. And that's what he tells himself, to keep moving forward and keep searching, even though at this point, his memories have been gone for like over a year. So, but he's not going to give up. Aziza does not believe in true love. So if you come to her with a relationship problem, her advice is to break up. Like, break up. Why haven't you already broken up? And Tristan, I said you shouldn't take any of their advice, but you really, really should not take Tristan's advice. He is very intense. He's like immediately all in. He's like, we've been on one date, time to plan the wedding. So he's a train wreck. No good advice there. Yeah.
I love that so much.
Okay, let me see. So in your book, the protagonist, Remy, and a very important supporting character, Kieran, are both genopaths, which are genetically engineered corporate agents. I love that art so much. So between the two of them, who would ask for permission and who would beg for forgiveness before doing something that is against the rules?
So, like many teenagers in YA books, they never ask for permission. Like neither of them would. They would just go do the thing, but they would do the thing for different reasons. So, like Kieran always does things without permission, but he also does things without Remy's consent, and she finds that very irritating. So I think she would. No, it's really not good. He grows. You know. But she would like it a lot more if he would ask her permission, which he doesn't. As for forgiveness, he would never beg for it because in his mind, he's doing what's right for everyone because that's how he was engineered. He was engineered to be like this master manipulator planner guy. So of course he's right. Why would he need to ask for forgiveness for anything that he did? But Remy is very opposite of that. Ever since she met this girl who changed her life and made her realize like, oh, I don't have to just be like this, genetic corporate agent. I can have my own ideas and opinions and feelings. Ever since then, she's very like hyper aware of what she does. And so she's always worried that she's going to like make someone mad or upset or just like do something wrong. So she would always be asking for like forgiveness and apologizing, sometimes to her detriment. And she kind of has to learn that throughout the book, but yeah, neither of them would ask permission ever.
Just let it be known that I'm very much Team Kieran. I mean, I love Remy, but like in my heart, like I'm Team Kieran, and even when Kieran is wrong, like he's right because I love him. So
he's a little chaos, full of secrets and plans that he tells nobody. And then
Kieran thinks he's always right. I just think he is always right. Like maybe he had a point. Maybe he is right.
He probably had a reason. Probably wasn't a great reason, but in his mind it was. All right, next question for you. So, Aziza, my love, my favorite character. Aziza is a hedge witch. So what she does is basically guard the boundary between fairyland and the human world, which is a big job. But this also means that she encounters a lot of fae and a lot of other creatures that are not fae, but are still magical and dangerous. So we actually both have a lot of fun creatures in our book. So which of the magical creatures, fae or not fae, were your favorite to write about?
One creature that I really like are the nymphs. And in particular, there's one nymph who is like a character that plays an important role in the story, and her name is Irelis. And in this world, nymphs are basically humanoid beings that kind of resemble trees, and she's like beautiful, but also very unsettling. She's petty and like greedy and fun to write. And there's like a scene where she wakes up Aziza in the middle of the night by like climbing onto her windowsill and like scratching at the window. And she will she offers Aziza help in exchange for like flesh and bone, which is a deal that Aziza refuses. And she's always having to like fend off deals like that. So I love writing fae that are just a little bit scary. And the fae are also fun because like, they're not just like writing a wild animal, they're characters with their own moral code, and their own motivations. So yeah, so they're always fun.
I love that. I also love your interpretation of, fae. There's a lot of books about fae out there. You can pick your flavor of the week, I feel like. But I do feel like yours are extra creepy and like they're always doing the deals in like an unsettling way, in like a good way. In a way that makes you feel like you're a kid and you're reading a book about some creepy creature. Like not like a lot of them, I don't have any problems with whatever fae you might choose, but like it just evokes that feeling of like being young and like a little bit afraid of this thing that you don't understand. And it's like, ooh, and I love that so much.
Yes, I love that too. I love that kind of fae. But you also have a lot of creatures in your books, where in book 1, you had ice demons. I love the ice demons, by the way. They were very scary. And you also had like giant predatory cats and evil foxes. And now in book 2, with the jungle setting, you have a whole different set of creatures. And you have things like flying bat monkeys and killer crocodiles, which is someone who grew up in Florida. Like, I love killer crocodiles. So are any of these animals based on a real experience that you had with something in the wild?
So I also love just weird monsters. I'm obsessed with monster movies. I love monsters. Even though I'm like a wuss and I can't watch like intense horror movies. It's fine. So crocodiles, I also grew up in Louisiana. So yep, big gators, bring it on. They're just so massive and they're like dinosaurs and I love that. So that's where those came from. As for the monkeys, one more time with the lights. So like I said earlier, I've been to a bunch of jungles. I used to live in Asia, so I visited jungles in Malaysia. I took a trip to Peru one year. So I've seen different jungle settings. And every time I go somewhere, I have an encounter with a monkey and I hate them. I think they're really cute. I love them on TV, but in real person, like in real life, they're evil. And so like one time in China, we went to this place. In retrospect, I should not have gone to the place called Monkey Island. Seemed like a good idea at the time. It took like a boat and a bus and a tuk-tuk to get there. And so we get there and it's like the scariest monkeys you've ever seen. It's like these big monkeys and the species are called macaques and they're not nice. They're known as being like mean monkeys. And so this island is full of them. We got attacked before we even like went in the door. And my friend had to like get rid of this monkey trying to eat her food. And then we were inside the park and there was like this guy on stage with the motorbike and the monkey was like riding the motorbike and it had like a stick attached to the bike. I mean, it was a disaster waiting to happen. And at one point it was supposed to stop and the monkey didn't want to stop and he like hissed at the trainer and I kid you not, his mouth was as big as my face with teeth. And I was like, we got to get out of here. The monkeys are going to attack us all. We have to leave. So
You were on their turf.
it was a terrible idea. So yeah, monkeys really cute on like nature documentaries or at zoos. Really scary in real life to me. And even like when I was in Peru, there were, cute, much smaller monkeys, not macaques.
Mm-hmm.
I still was like, I'm just going to stay over here. Fine.
You were done. Trauma.
So yeah, there's evil monkeys in my book. They're very reminiscent of The Wizard of Oz. The flying monkeys is basically what they are.
Oh, I did not make that connection. I love the backstory though.
It wasn't where it came from. I didn't take it directly. It was definitely like how can I make monkeys scarier? Give them wings. And then later I was like, oh, this is definitely like Wizard of Oz vibes.
Okay, I've learned I will not go to Monkey Island.
Don't do it.
Cross that off the list.
It sounds great in theory. Don't do it. Okay, so one final fun question for both of us.
Okay.
If your characters were a meme, what meme would they be?
Okay, so you know that one image of the three girls on the subway train, and one of them is like asleep and she's holding a pizza box and the pizza box is like falling out of her lap and the pizza's on the ground, and then the girl in the middle is like this very goth Wednesday Addams type, and then the girl in the end is like in a wedding dress and her face is in her hands and she's just sobbing. And that's
is that Leo
energy.
Is Leo the one in the wedding dress like sobbing?
Leo the one in the wedding dress. That's their energy together. And what about you?
So there is this meme. I think if you Google it, it's called Disaster Girl meme. And it is this little brunette girl who's staring at the camera like with this like mischievous look on her face. And behind her is a house on fire. And she's just standing in front of it like, and that meme can summarize like literally everyone in my book. Remy, Kieran, Emiko, Senna, like they're all just like disaster. And they're like, yes. I did this.
And that's why I love them.
Yeah, they're a mess. They're chaos. I call them my chaos children.
They are very chaotic. Oh, I was just gonna say, where do we find the audience questions? But
I am back. I was listening. All right, everyone, it's time for the audience questions. If you have any questions that you would like to ask Meg or Rochelle, please submit them again under the Ask a Question below, and we will be sure to address them. All right, so first question up from Melanie. This one is already going to be a deep dive one or a deep one, so lock in those brains. All right, so for both of you, growing up, I could count women sci-fi fantasy writers on my hand. Now it seems like there are so many wonderful female voices in sci-fi fantasy YA. Do you have any thoughts on women in sci-fi fantasy YA in the future for more diverse voices in this space? Good one, Melanie.
Getting deep.
Yeah.
I'll talk for a little bit first. I love this observation, and it's totally true. I think that especially, I'm going to age myself here, but I'm very much an older millennial. So when I was growing up, there was not a ton of women writers. They were there, Madeline L'Engle, hello. But it definitely wasn't like the full gamut that we have today. And I think that it finally came to a point where, we were tired of just men telling the same kind of sci-fi story. There's tons of Lord of the Rings-ish fantasies and like military kind of space opera sci-fi. And like, those are great, but there's so much more nuance that can be explored through sci-fi fantasy. And I think that more and more women were like, I have things that I want to say, and I want to say it through this lens. And so it's become trendy, but I'm all for it. Like, it's a great trend. I'm excited. I want to hear more voices. I want to see more diversity. Because the best thing about sci-fi fantasy is that it's not real. You can do whatever you want with it. You can explore whatever kind of concept you want. And so like everybody sees it differently. Like, I'm obsessed with monsters, but other people might not be. They might see them as scary, but I see them as like, can we be friends with them? And so like you get that fun, like different opinions, different lenses. So I hope the future brings more of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When I was growing up, I was lucky and feel like I had a lot of female fantasy authors that I could look up to. Like, I grew up on like Tamora Pierce and Robin McKinley. And so I feel like I always had those examples, even though I think there was still a lot more male authors. But knowing how much those stories, and especially not only the female authors, but the way that they brought their female characters to life, had such a huge influence on me. And so it makes me really hopeful to think that now not only do kids have examples of female authors, but a much more diverse range of female authors of color and queer authors, and thinking about the new voices that will give rise to a few generations from now is really cool and makes me really excited for the future of like genre fiction.
Yes.
Excellent. All right. Next. For both of you, were there any characters whose involvement in the story greatly changed from early drafts to the final book?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You want to go first?
Sure. So one that comes to mind is the Ash Witch. She is a spirit, and in this world, spirits are like, they're kind of like ghosts that have absorbed energy, and they can do like a little bit of magic. And this character and she plays a role. Like, she's not a huge character, but she does play a role, and she's always been in the book from the earliest drafts, but so many things about her changed. And almost everything else in the story, like, either pretty much stayed the same or it got cut and replaced with like new stuff. So the Ash Witch is one of the few things that like she stayed, but she changed a lot, like so many revisions. And her chapter, there's like a chapter in the middle where there's a conflict and she plays an important role in that. And it changed so much, but I'm really happy with how it turned out. So that's like my go-to, the character that I think of when I think of like the changes that this manuscript has gone through.
That's a great one. In Storm, Kieran has always been there. His name has changed a few times, but he's always been there. In one draft, one of the initial drafts, you could feel like some romance between him and Remy. And then I decided I didn't want that. I decided, the writer, not having that. So I rewrote it. And my editor was like, I'm picking up on a vibe here. And I was like,
I also picked up on the vibe.
What? It's true. Rochelle was also sending me messages. And I'm like, so even though I tried to do what I wanted, it was not what the characters wanted to do. And so in the end, I put the sort of romance thread back in. It's not very traditional. It's not like, oh, I met you and I fell in love with you. It's a little unrequited. Sort of. Remy's very clueless. That's why.
Are you sure?
Mm.
I don't know. I can't tell you. Remy doesn't know herself. She doesn't even know who she is.
Okay.
Which was kind of the fun part in the end of adding it back in, is that Remy is so clueless about even herself. And she's supposed to be this person, this agent who's like really good at reading people, but she doesn't bother. She cannot like get past the people close to her to read them correctly, which is kind of funny. I'm sure people are like, why does this person who's engineered to like read people not notice these things? But you know, she's also a teenager at the end of the day. So
She is so clueless, and like Kieran is so like I can't. I'm not gonna say anything.
yeah, no spoilers. Can't tell you. You can probably
Alright.
guess, like my editor.
Uh-oh.
Rochelle, we lost you.
Oh no!
The monster
See,
got her.
The internet. Okay, one moment. Let's see if we can get Rochelle back. We'll bring her back from the brink.
No, the crocodiles and the monkeys got her.
Okay, let's see.
Ooh, boop. I like the sound effects.
They're just built into me. All right. Well, as we wait for Rochelle to hopefully rejoin us, remember everyone, we got some more time. If you have any questions they are dying to ask, please submit them under the Ask a Question section. Thank you very much. While Rochelle loads back in, Meg.
Sorry.
Maybe, yay!
My internet.
It's okay. We were worried the monsters got ya.
They somehow jumped from your screen, Meg, over to Rochelle. So
Right,
no
I
longer
was gonna
flicking
say
the lights
we're
with
so
you.
worried about you.
I'm in a dark office, BT dub, everybody. So it's fine. I'm fine.
Everything's fine. So, Meg, you had mentioned earlier fun Easter eggs from other forms of media that you've been including in your books. Do you have any other Easter eggs that you included that were just absolutely fun? Or Rochelle, have you also included any Easter eggs in this title or your other title, The Prince of Nowhere?
Yeah, I can think of a few. Sometimes I write stuff without even realizing. I'm like, in the back of my mind, it's like, and then I'll read it. I'm like, this is a Jurassic Park quote. What are you doing? I can say, if any fans of Dark Angel are out there, I always have references to Dark Angel. They're numerical references. So if you watch that show, you'll know immediately what you're like. There's that number again. Why is it the same number in every book that she writes? Yeah, it's a Dark Angel reference. And there's other like random Star Wars stuff sprinkled in. Just there's so many, like, and they're so vague. Like I can't even remember a lot of them.
It
So
just
would
like
you-
comes out subconsciously.
Somebody tagged me the other day and on Instagram, and they were like, I love the Star Wars reference. And I'm like, what page was that on? Crap.
So are you saying canonically that they exist in your universe? Or just fun coincidences? Who knows?
Who knows what I'm thinking?
What about you, Rochelle?
I usually don't put in Easter eggs on purpose. It's possible that like references slip in accidentally, though the original title of the book was an Easter egg. Before it was The Buried and the Bound, I was calling it The Most Terrifying Thing in the Forest, which is a reference to a Terry Pratchett quote from his We Free Men series. And the quote is, a witch ought never to be frightened in the darkest forest, because she should be sure in her soul that the most terrifying thing in the forest was her. So that was the original title. But obviously that went away because no one liked that title except me. So
I did.
that was valid. But yeah, other than that, I can't think of any Easter egg that stayed in intentionally.
And just great memory with that quote too. Nice.
Yeah, because I was drafting it and I had it like stuck on my wall for inspiration.
Oh.
Yeah, love that.
All right. Next, you both mentioned being fans of anime. What anime comps would you give for your books? Love this one.
Oh my gosh. All my anime comps are going to be old because I'm old. But if you
Same.
ever watched Dirty Pair, is one of my favorites. It's very sci-fi. It's about two girls that are like under teenage agents for a big like corporation, and they just like blow everything up like all the time. They just ruin everything and eventually like solve the mystery or save the day, but like in a very bad roundabout way. And so that's very much like the core of this book.
It's called Dirty Pair?
It's called Dirty Pair. There's a bunch of different iterations. There's even comic books. I'm trying to think of the anime. There's like Dirty Pair, and then it had like a subtitle. I'll have to Google it while I'm thinking about it.
I'm going to have to look this up too because that sounds great.
Yeah, I haven't heard this one either. My watch list. I actually don't have anime comps for this one. Though for the Prince of Nowhere, I think I thought about Ghibli movies a lot, and especially Spirited Away. And like whenever I was writing the Prince of Nowhere, I was like, I wanted to feel the way that Spirited Away made me feel, where it's like it's kind of eerie, but it's also whimsical. Yeah, so that would be like the closest comp I could think of for that.
And getting back to memes, Meg, and Studio Ghibli, I love the Miyazaki memes. Have you seen those?
Yes.
Where it's Miyazaki in a smock and he's just like smoking a cigarette saying, I have like, there's no point in life or whatever. Yes. Like this man who's written wonderful, fantastic, upbeat anime. And he just like in his life, in his work studio, like
dark.
Dark.
Sometimes we channel stuff. Like, I mean, my first Wolves is a pretty gritty, dark book. And if you've met me, I'm not like that. Like, I'm like this. I'm animated and I usually laugh at everything, or I make weird noises. It's very strange. I don't know. That's where that book came from.
It's like with and they've like had memes next to each other with Junji Ito, because he's the one who's done like very dark, like grotesque horror manga. But then in real life, he's like wearing cat ears and going meow. So
that's my guy.
The juxtaposition between him and Hayao Miyazaki, it's just like
I feel that in my soul.
All right. Unless anyone submits any more last minute questions, last one is, what is your desert island book?
Why would you do this?
Oh man, that's hard.
Really hard. I can't take my Kindle. I guess the battery.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, the battery's gonna die.
Oh my gosh, this is like the hardest question of all time. I guess I would probably take a Madeline L'Engle book. Probably Many Waters. I was obsessed with that book as a teenager. It's like the one where they like go back to ancient Egypt. It had a romance. Oh man. I haven't read it in years, but I loved that book growing up. That would be like a comfort book. Like, I can get out of here. You know, Meg can survive like time travel and like tesseracts. I can do this.
I'll wait out this desert island. I'm just going to read this.
It's another one I need to look up. For me, I guess I would probably take Good Omens.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
I think that would be it for me.
Great combination. Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett right there.
Right.
Well, speaking of which, books, I know you're both in like, I am promoting mode, your newest titles. Have you had any time to read anything new, or is there something on your to be read pile that you can't wait to start reading or diving into?
Honestly, one of the best books I've read in the last year was Rochelle's sequel. Buried in the Pound. I can't wait for y'all to read that one. I know we're like so far away from it. I'm sorry. I just gotta hype it up. It's so good. It's like even better than the first one. I don't even know how that's possible.
Thank you.
It's so good. I still think about it like all the time. It lives rent free in my head.
I'm like in the middle of edits for book 2, so that's good to hear.
You can do it.
Fine.
What about you, Rochelle? Anything recently?
Let me see. The book I'm reading right now is an older book. I'm reading The Gilded Wolves, which is like a fantasy like heist story set in it's a historical fantasy setting based on I think like 1900s France or something. I don't remember fully, but it's something like that, and it's got like this very fun like found family style cast. It's a heist, so it's like this ragtag team with each of them has a different skill.
That's Roshni Chokshi, right?
Yeah, Roshni Chokshi. Am I saying her name right?
Yeah, Roshni Chokshi. Yes.
Yes, and also there's a book called Revel that's coming out in a couple of weeks. I'm friends with the author. I love her. We're both friends with the author, but it's a very cool like inspired by Moulin Rouge, but a fantasy.
Ooh.
Yeah, so that's out in a couple of weeks. And I love that.
Prohibition. There's like a bunch of families. They all have a different magic. There's time travel. There's all like the main family has like gem based magic. So they're like performers. Oh god, it's so good.
Why is there no more talk about this? This needs to be talked about more.
I
It
know,
sounds so
right?
good.
I know.
Really,
Yeah.
Really, really good. Ravel by Alyssa Mia Smith.
Yes. I went
Pre-order
from like
now.
a book that's years old to a book that's like not even out. Yeah, I wish I could give you like a recent release, but of course my mind just like went blank.
Oh no, those are great ones. All right. Thank you everyone for joining us today. And if you're watching in the future, for tuning in. Don't forget, you can still purchase Meg Long's and Rochelle Hassan's books through Mysterious Galaxy. Supporting us lets us continue doing wonderful events with wonderful authors like these. And of course, you're supporting the authors themselves. And before we go, Meg, Rochelle, where can people follow you on social media? Especially so they know about that follow-up to the Buried in the Mountain, Rochelle.
I am on Instagram at Rochelle Hassan Books. And that's it. I'm only on Instagram.
I'm also mostly on Instagram, but my handle is the same for all of them. Just don't expect me to be there all the time. But it's hey, it's Meg with 3 E's. I'll type it in the chat.
How long have you had that one?
For a while, actually. I think I changed it. I think I made it like, I don't know, right after my book sold. So maybe 2020.
I wonder if anyone else just, like, when they found out you took it, like, oh, I'm going to add another E. And so I'm going to add another E.
I have a follower who also is hey, it's Meg, but she's got underscores between her. Why did I do that?
No.
Oh, no.
That's like too close.
Hindsight.
No, it's okay. We're friends now.
Oh, yeah.
Like the
You're just gonna collect the Megs.
Yeah.
That's a definitely different take on the movie The Meg.
Well, another favorite movie of
Megs.
mine, a big monster movie, and it shares my name.
That was a good one.
That was a great one.
I love a giant shark.
Yes, it ate
Right.
people. Okay, sorry.
Meg, Rochelle, this has been entirely fun. I can definitely tell you this has been one of the most fun events I've had the most giggles on recently. So thank you so much. This has been great.
Yeah.
All
we've
right,
had a
everyone.
blast. Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you so much.
Of course, everyone, thank you for joining us. We can't wait to have you for our next virtual event. Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.